These were the words said to me as I struggled to my feet in a parking lot in Chicago. The woman had come to my aid because she had seen me fall. Now, I was racing across that parking lot trying to get where I'd asked the taxi cab to pick me up at a particular time. I hate to be late. And so there is this urgency for me at times to get somewhere in a hurry. That sense of hurriedness kept me from seeing the patch of ice that contributed to my fall. I had just left the Pacific Garden Mission in downtown Chicago, where I had witnessed the 2,875th taping of a radio drama called Unshackled. Are any of you familiar with Unshackled? No? Well, as a child, I loved to listen to recordings of old-time radio shows. None of my rowdy boyhood friends knew this, but on Sunday evenings, a local radio station, I'm pretty sure it was WBAP, used to rebroadcast the old shows like The Shadow, Fibber McGee and Molly, The Lone Ranger, and a host of others. I loved these programs and loved to be in my bed early as a boy and fall asleep listening to them. I was always sure the Lone Ranger would win the day, and I knew the items in Fibber McGee's closet would come tumbling out and make loads of commotion. There was a certainty to the programs that I liked. You could predict that right would overcome wrong, that good would overcome evil. At some point, I found the radio program Unshackled. This program started in the 1940s and continues broadcasting today on many Christian radio stations, making it the longest-running drama in the history of radio. The program is very dramatic, with this very forceful organ music accentuating the most dramatic points. And in each of these Unshackled radio shows, there is always a person who is struggling in life. The man or woman may have been addicted to alcohol and drugs, may have been a prostitute, may have been abused as a child, or perhaps the person had belonged to what the producers of the program believed to be the wrong religion. These people always hit rock bottom, but are always picked up when their hearts and minds become unshackled. They always come to accept the Lord Jesus Christ as their Savior, and always are then able to lead a much better, much more productive life. Now, probably like you, I don't really agree with or believe in the theology of Unshackled. However, I do not doubt in any way that these people were uplifted by their religious conversion experience. They found something that worked for them. They found something that filled a void in their life. They found something that helped them up when they had fallen. These people found a way to live their religious life. Now, the radio program is a ministry of the Pacific Garden Mission on Canal Street in Chicago. Pacific Garden Mission gives clothes to those who need it. They give those who are weary a place to rest. They fix the mouths and bodies who are in great need of free dental and medical services. Pacific Garden Mission leads their religious life by doing the things they believe Jesus of Nazareth called us all to do. And they do it in Chicago, where there is great need. I still listen to the program today. It's offered online, and their website will have it for you to download onto your MP3 player if you like. And when I have a free half hour here or there, I will download one of the programs and listen to the dramatic and predictable radio program with this very distinctive organ music. And so there I was on this blistery January day in Chicago, listening to and enthralled by the recording process of this radio program. The actual recording of the program is, of course, much different from the finished version. There are mistakes which must be edited out in order to make that week's program as close to perfect as possible. And the recording took much longer than I thought it would. I had arranged for a taxi cab to meet me at the corner where I'd been dropped off. Time had sort of slipped away from me, and when I looked at my watch and realized the cab would soon be at our agreed-upon location, I bolted from the building, and in order to save time, had cut across this parking lot. Again, this was in January. And as you know, Januaries in Chicago are most often very different from those here in Fort Worth. In Fort Worth, the mere thoughts of snow will close down our schools. And businesses will shut their doors. Well, things do not shut down at the mere threat of snow in Chicago. They have the proper equipment. They use it all the time. So it is just a part of their existence. And they do an excellent job of cleaning the roads. They do a pretty good job at clearing the sidewalks. But what I didn't know until that day is that Chicago pays very little attention to their parking lots during these winter storms. So I'm scurrying across the lot, trying to meet the cab when I said I would, and do not see the ice. My feet went out from under me. My hand went down to crash my fall, but it also slipped on the ice. And I came crashing down hard, hitting the back of my head. Well, to be quite honest, I think I was more embarrassed than hurt. So I tried to get up quickly, hoping no one had seen me fall. And I'll be doggone if it wasn't like you were watching instant replay on television. My feet went out from under me, my hand went down to break my fall, and it also slipped on the ice, and I once again came crashing down hard, hitting the back of my head. So now I'm a little bit dazed. I'd seen this sort of thing happen to people on Funniest Home Video shows or something like that before, but this would never happen to me. Despite the loss of my left arm to cancer when I was a boy, I really have a very good sense of balance. In fact, I can even ride a unicycle. I have a great sense of balance. But not when it comes to the ice. So instead of trying to hurry and regain my footing as before, I was much more deliberate this time. And while I was regaining my balance, a woman came up beside me. She smiled at me and she said, "You're a little bit wobbly." Now, she and I were very different from one another. She was older than I, but not a lot. Her face had the wrinkles of a person who lived a much different life than have I. She had on a coat that was somewhat tattered, but was knee-length. It had a hood to cover her head, and it seemed much warmer than the light jacket I brought from Texas. The smile she smiled revealed holes where teeth had once been, and those remaining had the hallmarks of an extensive use of methamphetamine. But I could tell from her eyes that she wasn't on meth as we talked. Her lips held a cigarette that moved when she spoke, and she never took her hands out of her pockets to take that cigarette out of her mouth. Yes, she and I were very different. But at that moment, we were very similar, too. We were two human beings standing in a parking lot in Chicago. We were both cold, although I suspect I was colder than she. But she had stopped to make sure a fellow human being was recovered well enough from a fall on the ice that he could be on his hurried way to meet his cab at the designated time. I declined the cigarette she offered me. Because I don't smoke, I knew the cigarette would make me even more wobbly. But the gesture was one of kindness, and I thanked her for stopping to make sure I was okay and assured her that I'd be more careful. She asked us if I was sure, and I said yes. She said she hoped that the rest of my day was blessed. And then we both began to walk in opposite directions. Me towards the cab that was waiting for me, and she towards the Pacific Garden Mission. When I was safely in my cab, I could not stop thinking of this woman and our brief interaction. "You're a little bit wobbly," she had said to me. I couldn't help but wonder, if the roles had been reversed, would I have stopped to make sure that woman who had just rendered me aid was okay after a fall? Would my religious life have led me to her side? Of course, I hoped it would. I believe our Unitarian Universalist faith and all I hold dear would ask me to lend her a hand. But would I have really? Would I have honestly checked on her if she had slipped and fallen? There was a time when I was going to divinity school in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was driving along on this road, and I saw this man lying on his back in the middle of a busy side street, and other cars were just driving around him. I decided to stop. I assumed by his grizzled appearance that he was one of Nashville's many homeless people, and as I approached him, I could tell he was having trouble breathing. There were bubbles coming out of his mouth. And all I knew to do was to turn him on his side. But this action appeared to allow his breathing to come a little easier. An ambulance came. The emergency medical technicians thanked me, but then sternly asked me to step aside. I complied, and then I watched them put the man in the back of the vehicle and speed away. Sirens blaring. That's what I did when I was 23. I was much more idealistic then. I was in the middle of learning about social justice ministry then. It may very well be that I was even more open to new ideas then than I am these decades later. So have I come to the point in my life where I am too fearful of other human beings? Have I come to the point that I might drive around another soul lying in the middle of the street, or that I might not stop to help someone who had just fallen in a parking lot? God, I hope not. But I must admit to questioning the way I might live my religious life if confronted with a similar situation today. So listen to these words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, where he writes, "He who does a good deed is instantly ennobled. He who does a mean deed is by the action itself contracted. He who puts off impurity thereby puts on purity. If a man is at heart just, then in so far is he God." And while I dislike the gender-exclusive language, I agree with much of what Emerson said. The person who does a good deed is instantly ennobled. Those are the people with compassion. Those are the people I most want to emulate as I attempt to live a religious life. Now we know, you and I, that life is not as predictable as those old radio shows I like so much. Life is complex. It does not start and stop in 30-minute time increments that can be wrapped up neatly according to a formulaic script where we know good will overcome evil and we are unable to edit the final product. I believe we live a religious life when we are compassionate. When we are compassionate towards others, and when we are compassionate and forgiving of ourselves. There are many things I think about with regard to how Unitarian Universalists live a religious life, but I'll just mention three briefly this morning. The first is that Unitarian Universalists are a hopeful group of people. It's easy to get down when all that happens around us socially and politically does not move in the direction we want it to as quickly as we think it should. Hope is, it seems to me, what drives us towards attempting to make a difference. Hope is what allows us to be optimistic. Hope ensures that we will continue to try even when the odds are much against us. Unitarian Universalists are also a giving group of people. As we live out our religious lives through hope, we give of our time, we give of our money, and we give our commitments to causes and organizations. Unitarian Universalists are a people of deeds, driven by hope to put our faith into action, and this requires us to give. So hope is important, but it's not enough. We must also give. And it is my experience that Unitarian Universalists are givers. We live our religious life for action. We are not idle. We actually do. So Unitarian Universalists are hopeful. We are givers. And third, and perhaps most importantly, we do these things in community. We do these things together. Together we bring our hope and our generous spirit to this place we call church. And it does not matter that you are a Christian UU and this other person is a Buddhist UU. It does not matter to us that this person is a pagan UU and this other person is a humanist UU. In our best of times, we rise above these different monikers and come together under the common theme of Unitarian Universalism, and in community together we do good things. It's difficult to act in isolation. It's difficult to be alone and to make sense of the world. There are people who have been and are able to do that, but I'm not one of those folks. And my suspicion is that neither are you. Because you and I are here together in community, trying to make sense of a world that sometimes makes less sense, trying to do what is right, trying to live the religious life as best we know how. And it's not an easy path. You and I know that. Others will test us. We will test each other. And because we are small in number, and because we are where we are geographically, and because we are different from other religious traditions, sometimes we will find ourselves feeling less hopeful. There will be times, I'm sure, that you and I feel our generosity and our compassion has reached its limits. But then we come back together in community, and if we allow ourselves to be, we are transformed. We have this renewed vitality, so that when one of us is down, there is another of our community there to pick us up. We may say to the other, as the woman said to me, "You're a little bit wobbly." But together we find a way to move forward. So we may be wobbly at times. We may have our doubts, and there will be times when we feel like giving up. But I won't let you give up, and you won't let me give up. So what I ask this morning is that you actively practice your faith. Practice your faith by being hopeful, by being generous, and by coming together in community. Practice your faith by being compassionate towards others as often as you possibly can. Practice your faith by leaning on others at Westside when it seems like everything is just too much to bear that day, or that week, or that month, or even that year. So what I'm asking you to do is to live your religious life. As we rise together in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 298, Wake Down My Senses. Let's sing all five.